Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests. The season started out with such promise, didn't it? Monday Night Football against the Patriots. We were here, Toastmasters. Dolphins win the opening coin toss. They get the ball in the opening drive. They eat up half of the first quarter. They go all the way to the goal line and score a touchdown. They're winning 7-0. Maybe this was the year things would change. No. And here we are 8 weeks later. The season's a mess. Another forgotten football season for the Miami Dolphins. What are you going to do to keep your interest and fill your Saturdays and Sundays? You could turn your back on the team. Most people here already have. But you could also perhaps cheer for a rival team. Feels a little dirty though. Or you could cheer for a different professional team, one that isn't playing against your arch rivals, one that has a chance of the playoffs next week. How is this possible? The Canadian Football League. You might think I'm crazy, but Canadian and American football have a lot in common. Once you learn the history, a few rules, and the teams, you'll be able to watch the playoffs next week because it's much too cold in Canada to play playoff football in January like it is here in the States. Canadian and American football were developed simultaneously in the late 1800s as a derivative of rugby. The concept of a scoring drive, of 1st and 10 and downs all started at Yale in the late 1800s. The concept of a forward pass is unique to both American and Canadian football and really distinguish it from any other variations of the sport like rugby or soccer. In fact, if you were to go to a bar and just glance at a game and glance away again, you wouldn't notice right away whether it's a Canadian or American football game. This led to the CFL actually establishing teams in the United States in the early 1990s, in Alabama, California, and some other states. Miami was supposed to have a team in the CFL called the Miami Manatees in 1996, but the CFL canceled their US expansion in 1995 and that team never played a game. Another direct tie between the CFL and the NFL is Canada's development of NFL players, including legendary quarterback Warren Moon, who started his professional career in Edmonton in the CFL. Other NFL players of note that started in Canada: Doug Flutie, Jeff Garcia, current Seattle Seahawks kicker John Ryan, and current Miami Dolphins defensive back Cameron Wake, all started in the CFL. But despite their similarities, there are some key differences in the Canadian Football League. There are some small things like a slightly bigger ball, unlimited motion in the backfield, and unlike the No Fun League, the NFL, you're actually allowed to celebrate after a touchdown. There are some major differences. The Canadian football field is 150 yards long, including the end zones, compared to the NFL, which is 120 yards long, including the end zones. Because of the bigger field, there's more players, 12 players on each team on the field at a time instead of 11. Another major difference is there's only 3 downs instead of 4 in American football. These 3 things, 1 less down, 1 extra player, and a bigger field actually make for a more exciting game because it has a potential to create exhilarating long passes because teams are often forced to throw the ball on 2nd down instead of 3rd down. As an example, the Miami Dolphins last year only had 4 plays that were over 40 yards long, compared to the CFL, where even the worst teams will have at least 2 or 3 of those per game. So there's always a chance for a huge momentum shift. Another major difference is the play clock, which is 40 seconds in the NFL compared to 20 seconds in Canada. So those players are moving pretty fast down the field. There's going to be more scoring because the plays have to be run in at least half the amount of time. But it also makes a big difference at the end of games. Where in the NFL, if you're a winning team with the ball, the other team has no timeouts, you can just run out the last 2 minutes of the game without ever running a real offensive play. But in the CFL, this rarely happens. You can only do that, it's only possible in the last minute of a game. As a result, most games come right down to the wire. As an example, the last 2 Canadian Championship games have come down to deciding plays in the last 30 seconds of the game. When was the last time you remember a Super Bowl coming down to the wire? Maybe in 2000? When was the last time you remember 2 Super Bowls back-to-back coming down to the wire like that? I can't remember. So you know the teams, or you know the history, you know the rules. You can watch the playoffs next week if you know the teams. This is one thing that the Canadian Football League has often been criticized for because there's only 8 teams. of which 6 make the playoffs, 75%, the highest percentage of all professional sports. They used to have 9 teams, but the CFL got that wrong too, because at that time, there was one team in the league called the Rough Riders, and another team in the league called the Rough Riders. So it made for some very interesting television broadcasts. The Rough Riders are beating the Rough Riders 10-7. For the teams that do exist still, Saskatchewan and Toronto did not make the playoffs. In the Eastern semifinal, Montreal will play Hamilton. And in the West semifinal, Calgary will play Edmonton. The winners of those 2 games will play the division winners, either Winnipeg or Vancouver. And the winners of those 2 games will play the Canadian Football Championship on US Thanksgiving weekend. And so while you're with your families, huddled around the television eating turkey, rolling all over the floor, watching the Dolphins lose to the Cowboys at Cowboy Stadium on Thanksgiving Thursday, take out your laptop, go to ESPN3.com, click on the CFL link, you can watch the game live. Your family will notice that it's not the Dolphins playing, but not because of one less down, a bigger field, a bigger ball, a more exciting game, half the play clock, not because of those reasons. And I didn't even mention in the CFL that there's no fair catch. They will notice that it's not the Dolphins because it's a playoff game, something Dolphins fans have hardly seen in the last 10 years. Mr. Toastman.